Hey, it's great to see everyone out there talking college football, of course, today at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Miami specifically coming off that 8-3 campaign bowl loss to Oklahoma State. We will have the wholesome one on the line with us in just a minute. You've arrived at the right place, of course, for college football talk. All right. Want to let you know to take the deep dive here at Mark Rogers TV. You will see tons of national championship game previews from the Ohio State angle, from the Alabama angle as well. We had our Buckeyes live show on Wednesday. And of course, the Alabama Crimson Tide, we have reviewed them with both Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama and Gary Harris of WVUA in Tuscaloosa. So it's been a good time talking Alabama. Ohio State should be an amazing game we would expect on Monday night. Also, Notre Dame talk. Texas A&M just concluded that record with Leah Musgrave of TexAgs.com. That's coming your way very soon. So again, if you just love the Canes, keep it locked in here. We've got the wholesome one joining us in just a second. And of course, subscribe to our Miami channel. And full disclosure, full transparency, I've got nothing to hide. I don't try to fool anyone. You are not going to see anything different on the Miami channel than what you get here. It's just packaged differently so that you can pick and choose what topics you'd like to see. So I basically take these live shows with Cam Underwood and the Wholesome One and Paul's Scoop on the U. We talked to Paul the other day, and I divide those into topics, and then we place those over on the Miami channel. But I will say that you will miss some unique content over on the Miami channel because during the season, we did a number of post-game live streams and pre-game live streams over on the Miami channel that you can't get here. Or just flat out, if you just want to support what we do and help us build and grow the platforms, then subscribe both here and over at the Miami channel. If you're a college football fan of any team, any particular team, then check out the channels we have on Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio State, the SEC, Miami, Notre Dame, Clemson, Florida State, Texas, Oregon, USC. Check those channels out. And again, if you just want to help us build the vision, build it out, make it grow, then subscribe to those other channels. And if you have no interest in those teams, just turn off the bell for the notifications, let them fly by, but you're helping us build and grow the channels that way. If you've got a particular interest in any of those teams, then definitely get on over there. And it's the same deal that until we get to 1,000 subscribers on any one of those particular channels, then you're just going to see a repackaging of that content over on one of those channels until we get to 1,000. So, for example, with Ohio State, we've got over 1,000 subs on our Voice of College Football Ohio State channel, and I plan on doing a dedicated live stream over there to preview the national championship game and talk to all of you. We do have about 15 folks on the line. We hope to get the wholesome one here. Basically, his Thursday deal is he is hightailing at home from work, and whenever he is comfortable, has everything set up, has to fight the traffic before he gets home, then we, of course, talk to him about the Canes. The NFL draft is looming in regards to the decisions that have to be made. I believe the deadline is January 15th for players across the country in college football to make their decisions on the NFL draft. So we have news coming out every few hours. And of course, we're on top of that, not just with Miami, but with every team in the country. Also, of course, recruiting, nonstop talk about recruiting, who's committed, who's flipped, who's a target. And we have posted a number of videos on recruiting. And of course, the transfer portal is going insane. I posted a video just the other day reviewing the quarterback situation in the transfer portal with 87 possible transfers. And we're well over 600 in the transfer portal as it stands right now. I'm going to have a breakdown as well I just mentioned all the breakdowns from various angles of the national championship game. I've done some homework on the recruiting rankings between Ohio State and Alabama and have some interesting information to pass along there as well. Just posted a video not more than 2 hours ago with Steve Deace from Michigan Podcast on Jim Harbaugh's state of limbo with Michigan right now. They've offered him a contract extension. He has not yet taken it, unless the news has come down in the last couple minutes. He has yet to take the contract extension, and he's courting suitors from the NFL at the same time. It seems to be a good situation for Jim Harbaugh, not necessarily a great situation for Michigan. I think they should have tighter reins on their program and their direction and not be waiting hand and foot on Jim Harbaugh to make up his mind. That's my thought. So you get that with Steve Deace and myself. You can check that out. It's called the 10-Minute War. Little play on words from Bo and Woody back in the 70s, the 10-Year War. All right, let me get to your comments and questions before we get to the wholesome one. Still waiting on him. Shane's on the line. Hey, Mark. A work break. Got to get back now listening to my Bluetooth earbuds. Well done. Great show. Go Canes. A great show is coming, Shane. Great show. You obviously have faith in what we do. You're proclaiming it to be a great show before we've even started. Yes, Shane. We appreciate your encouragement to everyone out there to hit the like button. Baltimore Ravens football. I swear if against Alabama, I see D. Wiggins or Mark Pope against Alabama, Manny Diaz is not the guy. Why does this guy? I can't even read that. So Baltimore Ravens football. Let's do a little typo check on that, and I'll get back to that. But I think I get your point. You don't want to see D. Wiggins. You don't want to see Mark Pope against Alabama in the opener next year. And if that Alabama team's anything close to this Alabama team, which we know based on everything Nick Saban has put on the field since 2008, his second season in Tuscaloosa, they're going to be the best team in the country, or at least one of the top 3 or 4. And Miami showed us what they showed us against North Carolina and against Oklahoma State. I'm going to say right now, the way things stand on January 7th, 2021, Miami does not stand a chance in that game. That is not the best of games for Miami to be playing to open 2021. If Ohio State's an 8-point favorite with that team against Alabama, I got to think that as things stand right now, that opening line for the Miami-Alabama game could be 3 touchdowns. Notre Dame was a 20-point underdog against Alabama, and they're miles ahead of Miami. But that's the opener. Should be exciting, at least. At least the build-up for it's going to be exciting. One more read here, and then we get to the wholesome one. Mark, from an outsider perspective, what is our biggest weakness? Still O-line? Baker calling the plays, receivers. Curious, what do you have to say? Well, we will bring in the wholesome one. He's going to give the real take. The the wholesome one. Appreciate.
How you guys doing?
Bye, of course. This is your time slot. This is your spot here.
Yeah, I'm glad I could make it, man. I'm glad I could make it. A lot of travels, but I'm glad I'm here. Always happy to be here.
I don't want you to break a neck. I don't want you to do anything crazy to get yourself on here in time. So I think I texted you that today. Take it easy. Get here when you can. We'll be fine. Just do what you can.
If we go over an hour, we'll still be here.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So the wholesome one, I'm being asked for my amateur perspective on this one, and then we'll, of course, serve everything up to you. So Kyle's asking for my take on the biggest weakness on the team. So Kyle, understand, and you probably heard this, you watch us all the time. I am watching almost all of Miami's games.
Mm-hmm.
They may play a game from time. Now, this particular season, I watched every game. I might have checked out the Florida State game after it was 28-0 or whatever the score was. I'm not watching garbage time. But besides that, I watched just about every game. And typically I'll watch the 8 or 9 games that matter every year. So I do think that the strength of the defense has declined. This defense that we saw this past season was not as good as what we saw from 2016 through 2019, while the offensive line was better. So the weaknesses and the strengths of the team have kind of compressed. The wide receiver core, I would say, maybe not the weakest unit on the team, but the most disappointing. And I think Wholesome One, it's not just that it's the most disappointing, but it's the easiest one for your average fan to detect.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they watch line play, you really have to know what you're talking about and know what you're watching sometimes to see issues. Now, if a line's giving up 8 sacks a game, sure, we know that they're not good. But in regards to specific players along the offensive or defensive fronts and picking that out, that's why we rely on guys like you. I really have to watch for things or rewatch a game. But the wide receiver play just in flat out dropping passes, and then against Clemson not being able to separate and gain those one-on-one matchups. I think that was the most disappointing position unit for me.
I agree. But I think it's also based on your perspective. You look at a guy as in Mark Pope, who, everybody's either 4 or 5 star recruit. I've had this conversation with you. I've had this conversation on my live. I think he was more of a, 4-star, 3-star type of guy, high 3-star, mid 4-star type of player. He went to a rivals camp one day and went overboard, kind of like Robert Burns, how Robert Burns had that one day where he went crazy and everybody talked about him being this. Cam talks about this story for, almost 3 years now. He's talked about that one story. Same thing happened with Mark Pope. Now, Pope is a good player, okay? But now he becomes your number one. Now, if need be, there's going to be double teams slided his way if we're talking about strictly receiver. When you talk about the University of Miami, if anyone's getting double teamed, it's probably Brevin Jordan or they're just loading the box. And mostly they're doing both because you can load the box and double because it's all the tight end is in the box. Our run game was the best thing that we had going for us, whether that was from De'Aaron King or the staple of running backs that we had. So they were able to load the box against us every team, put at least 7 people in the box because that way I can double team backs, I can double team tight ends, and I can also play contain with my rush, keeping De'Aaron King in the pocket. So, and we weren't able to force teams, excluding NC State, to push off and keep the 2 high against us and open up the box so that the run game also gets going. And also you have Brevin Jordan down the seams or Will Mallory down the seams. Now, we do have some breaking news that I want to drop on your channel in a second here, but I'll go ahead and answer this question just to continue, all right? I think we have to preference our statements when it comes to our wide receivers. What did we all think was going to happen is what we have to ask ourselves. Yes, you bring in a valuable wide receivers coach and Coach Rob Likens. The wide receivers started to show up a little bit, yes. But I by no means am saying the way that they have dropped balls egregiously, how they've been out of position, how they haven't fought for the ball, how they don't know whether to attack it at the highest point, whether to catch it in stride, whether to catch it and fall. They have not gotten to that point where we're a well-oiled machine, let alone a well-oiled program across the board. So I think to point the finger at wide receivers is not really fair to everybody because this program has so much growth that needs to happen from the core out. But to answer your question, there are a couple groups that had a lot of growth and a couple of them that also went down. Wide receiver, I think, is one that had growth, but they did not meet the expectation that every Miami Hurricane comes on and thinks that just because this young man wears number 6, he must be Santana Moss. Or just because this young man is 6'3", he has to be Andre Johnson. That's our fault. That's not their fault. D. Wiggs is a 3-star solid recruit. He's not a top 3 wide receiver in the country like Andre Johnson was when he put pen to paper to sign to the University of Miami. So I think we as fans have to definitely understand the pressure. And every institution has pressure. I mean, you sign at Ohio State. There's some big-time wide receivers that have been through there recently. But that doesn't mean that you have to be him. But guess what? They're signing top tier. Okay, I can expect closer to Andre Johnson if I'm signing a Jalen Hazelwood, if I'm signing a Jerry Jeudy, than if I'm signing a young man who's a 3-star and expecting him just because he wears the same logo and number to be the exact same player. We can't do that. And we just got quality coaching at that position for the first time in 17 years. So that's a conversation that a lot of us are having amongst the fan bases now. At a point where we have a chance to bring in better coaches, we need to go the route of the University of Miami is not a place where you come and learn. We need to hire well-established coaches and bring them in. Same thing that we did on the offensive side of the ball. We brought in well-established Rob Likens. We brought in Coach Red Ladd, who's pretty established in his ways. Garen Justice a little bit, Stephen Fields a little bit. But at key positions, we brought in well-established coaches. We shouldn't be just promoting from within on the defensive side of the ball. We don't need to do that anymore. We don't need to take a flyer on a young up-and-coming. No, go get well-established coaches. I'm tired of coming here, Mark, for the last 3 years, and we're still wasting players. We can't keep doing that to young men and expect them to trust their futures to us. We need to go out and get established coaches.
Tremendous take from the Wholesome One. Folks, get excited. We got the Wholesome One on here. It only happens once a week, but I am so grateful to you, Wholesome One, for you to take your time out to come on here each and every week. I hope that the folks out there understand what we have when we bring you on with the stats, the information, the knowledge, the game, film breakdown. It's just tremendous, and I learn a ton because I'm trying to keep track of everyone. So you keep me in the Miami loop, and I appreciate it so much.
No problem, man. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So you got some breaking news for us.
Yes, I do. There's a particular player who has been a part of this program for 4 years. He signed here, and he's been up and down to the point where he and another player even divided this fan base between Five Hive and Team Jaren and Miami Martell. And it was something that was just egregious now that we look back on it. We shouldn't have rooted against one another. We should have just rooted for the right player to come out on top of that. So N'Kosi Perry, number 5, has decided to enter the transfer portal. A lot of us saw this coming. His career has had an up and down slope. I mean, he started out with a young man who probably should have never been his position coach. And John Richt, Mark Richt's son, who his foundation was never really laid properly. A young man that was probably a great, piece of clay dough, but needed to be molded to be the type of QB that a lot of us wanted him to be. I mean, his rocket arm, the way he can understand defenses at the level that it needed to go was never established here. And I do feel bad for that young man because that's something that, these $100,000, $1 million coaches get paid to do, is to be able to hopefully help to bring you along. That's what the job is entitled. Not only as a football player, but as a young man. There were plenty of things that people said about N'Kosi Perry off the football field. And yes, he's made his mistakes. It's well documented. He has been someone who has really turned things around, focused himself, and gotten much better. As you saw in the Oak State game, in the bowl game, he was able to step in. And some can argue the offense looked a little better under him due to his arm strength and just putting it out there and giving him a chance. So I'm really, really happy to see him get an opportunity to go somewhere. I don't know where. Talks of maybe a USF, an FAU. I mean, he's a Florida young man, so they're thinking that he's going to stay in the state. But I don't know for a fact where he will go. But for me personally, I'll never forget the game winner versus Tallahassee with Brevin Jordan. I loved it. I've always felt like he should have had that chance versus Florida, and we threw a freshman out there and kind of ruined his confidence. And Jaron Williams, who also transferred out last year. What this also shows is, to me, growth from Coach Manny Diaz, and I'll tell you why. Instead of holding on to a young man and not allowing them to leave or being in the way of them leaving, I believe there was a sit-down conversation and basically saying, I trust you to just do what's best for you, because we have the Eric King for another year, hopefully, due to the injury. And then we also have a Jake Garcia, a Tyler Van Dyke, a Peyton Matocha, who are all under second-year players, very young players. So there may not be a spot for N'Kosi Perry to start here moving forward. So I'm happy with another year of eligibility. An older player can go to another system and do well. I hope he goes to a spread where he can use that arm and get it out there and show that rocket off. But he'll always be a Cane. He's obtained his degree already from the University of Miami, and I'm very happy to see him step away, and I hope he goes off to be great at whatever institution, as long as it's not Tallahassee.
I'll give you my assessment and evaluation, and I certainly want to know if this has any value at all. So the one distinction I'll make between Perry and certainly Malik Rozier and then Jaron Williams is that the ease at which he threw the ball. So Brad Kaya, it's been so long since I watched him play, but basically you're looking at a guy who had he been developed, he was drafted by the Lions, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Like a 6th round selection. You know, he certainly had ability and skills, and why he came out and didn't take advantage of what could have been provided for him in 2017. But then again, considering the coaching he would have received in 2017, I don't know that it would have helped him too much. But theoretically, another year in major college football would have really helped Brad Kaya. So he was a really good player, certainly. Then we get to Malik Rozier, and you know, separating again the person versus just making a player evaluation. You know, there's no question that Malik Rozier should not have been starting anywhere for a Power 5 team. It just looked like it was difficult for him. Like the accuracy was just, he was scattershot. Jaron Williams can throw the ball with velocity and so forth, but comparing Rozier and Williams, and I'm not saying that they're the same quarterback, but N'Kosi Perry threw the ball with such, I love when guys can just, for lack of a better term, sling it.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like he could just, now maybe he didn't make the best decision in the world. Maybe the ball placement wasn't the best, but man, he just threw it with ease, and he could just rip it. And it just looked natural coming out of his hand to me compared to those other two.
Right. And I think those other two had better mechanics. So their footwork, their shoulder placement, they were able to, you know, it was.
Yeah, he had more of this kind of like this odd.
Could just like, and it just shoot, you know, it just got out of his hand.
Yeah.
You know, I think N'Kosi Perry, and my favorite QB at University of Miami recent that I got to watch from beginning all the way to the end was Stephen Morris. And Stephen Morris, there was a reason why he had a 6-year backup career, started a couple games. It's the way that he was able to just, it was effortless the way that ball shot out of his hand. He had issues with throwing to the sideline accuracy, but over the middle of the field and deep, oh my goodness. He didn't have much touch, but he was super cerebral, had a great IQ, and if there was a ball, he could fit it in a lot of windows with Stephen Morris. And I think N'Kosi Perry, man, it's funny somebody put it in there. If he goes to USF, it'll be another QB battle between him and Jaron. Wouldn't that be funny if he goes to USF? But I think going under the offensive coordinator from Clemson, Scott
Elliott.
Well, Elliott is there now, but the one who's at the head coach at USF. Scott.
Well, Chad Morris.
Something Scott.
So he would have been at Clemson before Chad Morris, or between Morris and
Chad
Elliott?
Morris at USF right now? Who's the head coach?
No, I don't believe he is, but Chad Morris was the Clemson offensive coordinator.
All right. Got to type it all the way in. Jeff Scott. That's his name.
Okay. Yep.
Jeff Scott is at USF. So what I was saying is going there and getting in his system, I think, would be really good for N'Kosi Perry because of what he did and the way that his QBs played. And I think another thing people get misconstrued, Mark, to step to something else. This argument that Miami's always had talent, we got to evaluate that too. Because if we really want to sit down and have these type of discussions, Miami has had B-, B+, maybe an A- talent. Miami ain't rolling in big-time talent like that to where we think. And, if we just fix the coaches, then the players will just get in line and it'll just work out and we're back in the national championship game. No. This top tier, there's like a top 3, even 4, 5, and 6 is playing a completely different game than even 8 and 9, and we're not even there. So there's a lot that we got to put together and start investing in. And another thing, they've been doing this for. There's certain teams that decided that this was going to be their thing, football, about a decade ago. Miami's just now having these conversations. Miami's just starting to get pretty good strength and conditioning. When teams at the elite level have been having in a whole different level of strength and conditioning, some teams, Mark, have their own staffs that's almost the same size as some coaching staffs, just for strength and conditioning. Then nutrition, then sports. I mean, it's just way out there at some places. And then, with the couple of talent that we do have, if we get a coach that can galvanize the troops and really get us focused, then we may be able to get a 2017 in there. When we get a 10 win. You start talking about the elite of the elite, it's gonna take a little minute for Miami to get up there. But hashtag Live Squad. I love seeing that. Man.
There it is.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Danny P.
So we love when people can get in here, for the live edition, because you can leave your comments and your questions, and we will get to as many as possible. But certainly understand that if you missed 10 or 15 minutes, you probably missed the headline or the big topic of the day. So just wait for the video to post, head on back, and catch up with that. I want to hit on a topic real quick. And Coconut Cane, thank you so much for the recommendation to check out Haps. I don't know what that is. I will check it out, though. So Coconut Cane, thank you for that. Eddie the Cane asking about Cam Underwood. So, yeah, I don't want anything to be a secret or anything like that, and I probably should have addressed this before. There's nothing serious going on. There's no rift between Cam and I. We're still on good terms. There are no problems. Cam just had so many things and obligations going on in his life currently that he needed to step away for a time, and so that's what. So there's nothing wrong in regards to Cam and I. We certainly miss him, but want him to take care of the things he needs to professionally and personally. All right. Again, leave your comments, your questions, and debate topics. Where do we stand on whether I'll go 3 different fronts on this, and let's pick them off one at a time. I believe January 15th is the last day that a player can declare for the NFL draft. So in regards to
16, somewhere in one of those 2 days.
Okay. So in regards to Miami's list of who's declared, who's mentioned or announced that they're coming back versus who are we waiting on?
Okay.
Where do we generally stand there?
Those who have declared are the 2 defensive ends, Jalen Phillips, Quincy Roche. Those 2 have declared. Those who are known to have, who are coming back, Cam Harris. Yesterday was released. Light-skinned warrior Bubba Bolden is coming back. And someone that we're waiting on is Brevin Jordan. That's really how that goes. Personal opinion, super happy for the 2 young men at defensive end going to the NFL draft. Why not? I mean, Jalen Phillips, the way he jumped out, his film he put together, it was a little sporadic. I think he was battling some injuries or just I don't even want to put the injury bug on him. I don't know if that's entirely true. I think he was really waiting on getting in football shape, getting in the groove, getting able to get after it, because once he switched that, it was over. He's been, he had a back-to-back pretty good games. And of course, North Carolina, he wasn't allowed to do anything because we just got out-schemed. And there's not much yelling and screaming and flipping tables you can do when you're getting out-coached. That's just a schematic thing. If someone's able to beat you with 3 plays and they know that you can't change your scheme to fix that, that's just elite level coaching versus very mediocre, horrible coaching if you can't make any adjustments on the job. And that's, like I said, I don't care who you put in there, who should get the blame. If it's Baker's defense, if it's Manny defense, if the players are calling it, either way you want to point a finger. The issue was we made no in-game adjustments. So he didn't get a chance to make much of an impact on that game. I think he had a sack and a half, but it wasn't really much because they just ran the ball down. So the 2 defenses, so happy for them. Cam Harris, a young man who sent out a quick tweet about he's going to make a decision on the first, and our fan base decided to take that and run with it. And portion of the fan base tell him he sucks and he should be running back 2 or 3. The other fan base is, other portion of the fan base is saying, we're so proud and hopefully you come back and be a senior because we have not had a starting senior running back. Pop quiz for you, Mark. Who was the last starting senior running back for the University of Miami?
Okay. What you need to do when you throw one of these at me, you keep moving on. I'm going to get the wheels spinning up here. Give me a couple minutes on this one. Last senior running back who started. Okay.
No problem. So we're happy to have him come back and be a part of that. So, and we're working on getting that out of the fan base, tweeting at players and all type of just stupid stuff that we got to make sure we're not doing anymore and growing out of it. And it's becoming a smaller and smaller portion. So I'm very, very happy about that one. Anyway, decided to come back. Also, light-skinned warrior Bubba Bolden, man, somebody I love. So happy to see him come back and be able to invest his physique, man, in that weight room. Because what he's doing right now at about 207, maybe, if he was to take that to 217, 220, people think, because Al Golden really ruined our mindset towards this, Mark, gaining weight at the college level. People think that you come in at 245, you should never get above 260, just tone it up and make them. No, that is a completely outdated mindset. These young men come in and put on weight, especially in the fronts, but they need to be put on weight properly. Shed the fat, build the muscle. Shed some more fat, build the muscle. Bulk them up, cut. There's a way that we do these things at the highest level, okay? And our coaches now, Coach Dave Feely, Coach Bellamy, and that nutrition and strength and conditioning are really getting our players together. If we can get Bubba to come in close to that 220 range, I think we'll see the best version of him. And also players that we're waiting on is including Brevin Jordan. We're going to go ahead and add Mike Harley to that list. A young man who, after the blowout versus UNC, was seen standing out on the field. A lot of people view that as his last game, presumably last home game as a Miami Hurricane. I didn't think that much. I believe that he was just in awe and couldn't really let it go what had just happened on senior day for him, getting blown out like that, 62-24, whatever the heck the score was for Miami. So those are the players who are departing, staying, and waiting on. A couple of them, there's no need to even bring them up. I think Nesta Silvera is going to come back. I think Will Mallory is also going to come back. So there's a couple of juniors who have the ability to. They have not yet said that they're going to stay or leave, but I think that they're going to stay.
Well, of course, you're not a doctor, Wholesome One, to try to project on De'Ara King's recovery. But, of course, the panic button is being pushed in the live chat concerning who's going to start against Alabama.
I'm not. I know it's an 8 to 9 month, and this happened late December. So what that would mean is, at its best, the opener would be his chance to come out and play. I don't know if he'll be fully healthy. I don't know about full speed. And now with the departure of N'Kosi Perry, now the conversation starts. Do you throw a Peyton Matoach out there? Do you throw a Tyler Van Dyke out there? I don't know. I don't know. And I don't want either one of those young men to feel like sacrificial lambs, because we all know what's going to happen. I mean, it's just that there's no conversation about what's going to happen. There's some talks in the fan base of hoping that the COVID season pops up again and we don't have to play them in an out-of-conference game. I just don't think that it's not going to be good. So, I don't know about De'Ara King, but I do know we have some people who they will have time. The good side of this is that we have time to help whoever the backups are going to be prepared like the starter. You got 8-9 months. You know the game is coming up. You know that De'Ara King is questionable at best for that game in particular. He may come back mid-season or later on, but at least I need to be prepared for this game just in case. So hopefully our backups are ready.
Appreciate Kyle your contribution. Thank you so much for that. Also want to hit on, and this seems to be just a common theme, everybody I talk to across America, it's NFL draft declaration time, it's transfer portal that continues to blow up, and it's, of course, coaching staff changes. Do you think Blake Baker is basically safe? Nothing's going to be done. It would have been done right after the season was over. Not necessarily. Because usually those heads roll pretty quickly. Usually.
There is talks. I got to be very careful here. Of some switches, continuous switches on the defensive side of the ball. There has already been a couple of departures. If you want to just go into this, Mark, we can. If you want to go into that. And Coach Ephraim Banda, someone who everyone swears is this elite recruiter, and he is not. He has been getting credit for other people recruiting just because he happens to be the position coach. So it's a lot of that going on. That's why I said we got to figure this thing out as a program. You know, we got Coach Mike Rumph, who happens to coach the corners, but is told to coach the corners the way that Manny Diaz wants his corners to be coached, but can't recruit the corners that he wants to be a part of the team. Okay, you got that. We've talked about that for a year. You have Coach Ephraim Banda claiming recruits that he didn't even recruit. What's going on here? We got a lot to work on, okay? We got a lot to work on. But Coach Ephraim Banda is out of here to Utah State as a defensive, also, Jose Borregales did declare for the NFL draft. Thank you, Rob Robinson. Thank you so much. He's going to Utah State. Presumably, he's going to be taking DVD DeMarcus Van Dyke, former player from the University of Miami, former NFL draft pick from the University of Miami at the cornerback position, with him to coach corners at Utah State. But there has been conversations of if Miami offers him the cornerback position, he will stay. In all respect to you, DeMarcus Van Dyke, I hope we have learned from this situation. This is not job on the training you. Okay. Let's please go out and get an established cornerbacks coach from a successful program and or a really solid to really good conference. Okay. We don't want to be standing here 3 months from now having the same conversation. Let's not do that. Other departures, nothing on the offensive side of the ball. Coach, our defensive line coach, Todd Stroud, is going to be stepping away from an on-field position due to health issues. He's also battled cancer and COVID-19 and things of that nature. So I think he's stepping away to make sure that he can, live his life. So I'm really happy to see him still be around. And in all likelihood, he's still going to be around the program. I just think he won't be a position coach. I know he won't be a position coach anymore. So Miami has an opening at defensive line. Miami has an opening at striker, maybe. And Miami has an opening, 2 definite positions as defensive line and cornerback as of right now. Could be defensive coordinator, could be linebacker. Everybody could go at this point. I'm just hoping we go get well-established coaches.
All right. So as soon as you offered up the question about the last senior running back to start at Miami, and I'm sifting through the live chat section. So unfortunately, everybody's playing along, which you should play along. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but then it pops names into my head because I see them and I don't want that. I never want to be the guy that gets hints. I want to be able to answer the question on my own. So the first name that came to mind was, I went through the last 5 years and I went back to Duke Johnson, but I think he declared early.
Big mistake, but yes, he did.
You think it was a big mistake? He's had a decent NFL career.
Oh, he's doing well. But I think that at that position, I would have loved to see him come back for another
Did
year.
you anticipate him being the kind of pro that he's been, which has been more pass receiver, third down back than it's been main guy?
Yes. As someone who watched him in person at Trash Pile Stadium, you knew that he was big for high school, at 5'9", 190 pounds or so. He was a pretty solid back at Miami Norland in high school, as far as size. Now, he was big time on the field, of course. I saw him run track and things of that nature. Then he also, when he transitioned to Miami as a freshman, very first game against Boston College, I watched it from beginning to end. Very good game. His first carry was 4 yards. His second carry was a 62-yard run straight to the house. That's when I knew this guy's a scat back. He's a true scat back. And if we had a big-time OC who had more of a spread presence, we would see him used some in the slot, out of the backfield, little option game, get him moving east and west. Because James Coley loved to run him up the gut and off tackle sometimes. And I'm just like, why are we not using him the way he's supposed to be used? He goes to Cleveland, and that's what they tried to start him as an every down back, and it didn't work too well. So he started splitting carries with Isaiah Caldwell. Then they started using Duke as the third down back. He got a lot more yardage. They had him on punt and kick return. He got a couple yardage. They used him in the slot. So he's a pretty solid backup back, and he's a solid scat back. So from my evaluation, even back then, I felt if he went to the right team who could use him as a multitude, they had a big cowbell, and then use Duke, I think he would do really, really well. I would have loved to have seen a couple years ago when Duke first came to the Texans, Lamar Miller was there, and we were going to have Lamar Miller and Duke. But then Lamar Miller ended up tearing an ACL and kind of been in and out of the league the last couple of years. So we never got a chance to see those two together. But I think Duke has always been more of a third down scat back.
All right. Then I'm going back. I sifted through as best I could into the 2000s and went all the way back to the great teams with Frank Gore and Willis McGahee. James Jackson preceded them. I remember him playing against Ohio State in 99, and I think he was on the team in 2000. And obviously guys were sticking around a lot more than they are now. So I'm going to say it was one of those guys. Between Gore and McGahee, and it's amazing that we're sitting here and Frank Gore is still getting carries in the NFL. It's amazing. I think he eclipsed somebody to move himself into third place on the all-time rushing list this past Sunday or the Sunday before.
Yep.
Just ridiculous. I'm going to say it was...
Well, you're a little. I'll give you a hint. You're a little too far back. Come up.
I went too far back.
Yeah, you're in between the two extremes. So come back.
I missed somebody. So while we're on this, and I'm going to continue to go through my catalog here, the transfer portal. So I just looked it up. For Miami, there's only the one big pickup from Tennessee, which is pretty substantial. This kid can play. You don't think it is?
Oh yeah. I just don't want us to think that he's Jalen Phillips. No, he's a pretty solid, strong side defensive end. But continue.
Yeah. And then they have two losses with Christian Williams, and there was somebody else in there. But I have been sifting through this transfer portal because I got to keep on top of it, produce videos, that sort of thing. I'm looking team by team by team over the last few days, and I'm seeing 8, 10, 12 players on most teams. So the Miami, it's not been that active yet. So it's a good sign people not leaving, wanting to leave.
Yeah. I don't know if I would want to see players transfer. I think there are some players who they've outwear their welcome. Okay, you're just not going to contribute to us moving forward. So I think some of them will and they're older players, so they could declare instead of going to another institution. But sometimes, Mark, you get to a point where we're starting to recruit a little better, and this young man won't get a chance to play for us. So,
a ton of people are guessing. Clinton Portis. A ton of people are guessing Mike James.
There you go.
Okay. Well, then we've got an educated group. You have done a nice job of educating the folks in the live chat because more people said Mike James than anyone. And that's why I bailed on my guess because I don't want to be led to an answer, but that seemed to be pretty prominent. So what year would that have been?
That was 2012.
Oh, it was okay. I thought he was a couple of years before that. Okay, 2012.
Because Duke Johnson was 12, 13, 14 and was gone. And so Duke Johnson, as a true freshman in 2012, backed up Mike James, who was the last senior starter. Now, of course, we've had senior backs who were on the team. But as far as senior starters, Mike James was the last one. Because after that, Duke Johnson left as a true junior. You had Mark Walton, who left, Travis Homer, who left, DJ Dallas, who left. Now Cam Harris is actually coming back. So he would be the first senior starting running back since Mike James, almost a decade. That's not good. And it's not like they were leaving because we're this elite program and we're pushing them out into the top 2 rounds. Nah. A lot of them just got up and left.
Okay. Because that's what I was going to point to. I was going to say that could be a good sign.
Not in Miami.
I don't know the last time Ohio State had a senior running back because Carlos Hyde and Zeke Elliott and J.K. Dobbins are taken off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then of those, Duke and Mark Walton, well, no, all of them has been drafted. Duke Johnson was drafted 3rd round. Mark Walton was drafted in the 4th round. Joe Yerby, undrafted, and had a cup of coffee with the 49ers for like 2 days. DJ Dallas was like 5th round. Travis Homer was like 5th round, somewhere in there. So all of them have been drafted, and all of them are still on active rosters, excluding Mark Walton because of his off-the-field stuff. But
Gus Edwards left early?
Well, Gus Edwards transferred to Rutgers.
Oh, that's right. Okay. That's right. Forgot
he
about
claimed
that.
Miami, but he played his best ball at Rutgers.
Yep. He's still with the Ravens, right?
Yes, he is.
And speaking of which, Baltimore Ravens football. So he's asking about the defensive end position in regards to Zach McCloud. Defensive ends, do we lack depth behind, Phillips and Roche? Forget it. Or is this see if Zach McCloud can play defensive end? Just asking basically about the experiment of making the move from linebacker to D end.
Sometimes, Mark, people just get chances just because of who they are. That's all I'm going to say on that. You took reps away from true defensive ends to try to help a young man get on the football field. And early on in that game, it made us look really bad because he's a linebacker who's used to reading the running back. So guess what happened when the QB came on and they did read options? He didn't stay outside because guess what? He came down on the running back. So their QB got a couple key first downs in that first half because we were just trying something new because this guy happens to be 6'2.5". But like I said, Mark, some people just need to move on.
Corey Raymond has gained a reputation as one of the best defensive back coaches in college football. He's been around the game for a long, long time, was a fine player himself for 9 or 10 years in the NFL and at LSU. So his name comes up in regards to trying to reel him in as I don't think he would make the transition as a DB coach. I think he would have to be the D coordinator.
Mark, you have your own channel, correct?
I do.
Yes. Multiple channels, right?
Yes.
Would you ever come over and run my channel? Just cuz.
I love you, Wholesome One, but I'd have to turn down that opportunity.
Because in all likelihood, it's a demotion. Okay. Why would he go from coaching at LSU, where he's allowed to do a whole lot of stuff because of that SEC patch on his chest at one of the most well-established football programs ever, especially at that position of defensive back, to come to Miami and coach the exact same position? I don't even think he would take our DC job. I truly don't. I truly don't. Because here's the thing. People are missing it when it comes to our program. These coaches all know what Miami could be, but a lot of them understand the inner workings of, even if I go down there and infuse what I know there, I don't know if their administration is going to want us to be as best as we can. I don't know if there's going to be the investment here as it is at a Florida, at an LSU, and definitely not at an Alabama or Georgia, where they're investing tens of millions, hundreds of millions at every corner. You know, it just doesn't work like that. So it was a fantasy booking for me too. I think he would be enticed by it, but who's to say that he would even be respectful of the price that we would try to give him to come here and work here? You know, like, oh, beat a DC for $4 million. He could make that to just coach corners in the SEC. So I don't think that would work out. Would I love it? I would like it. I think he'd be a really amazing recruiter, but has he ever coordinated defense before? Is he willing to come in and run the 4-2-5 like Coach Manny Diaz would force him to? Is he willing to deal with a lot of the shenanigans that University of Miami coaches have to go through? Because they don't just get to coach football and just enjoy being a good football program. It's not like that down there. So I don't know if that would work out. If we wake up tomorrow and this happens, I'll be pretty happy. But there'll be a lot of questions. What scheme is he going to run? What other assistants would come with a position coach to the University of Miami where he can help build a defensive side of the ball? I would want an established defensive coordinator. If you go get me somebody that's maybe like a B+ hire who's been a defensive coordinator, who has a name, who can fill a roster, a staff, I wouldn't mind that. So we'll see.
We love doing this each and every week with the Wholesome One. It's Miami Hurricanes Live. It's our 114th edition. We invite you to head on over to the Wholesome One's channel. You get some great film breakdowns. He does live streams where he takes your calls, your questions, runs through them, answers them. A ton of conversation and instruction on technique and scheme, and it's a learning experience for all of us. It's good stuff. So head on over to the Wholesome One Holloway here on YouTube and his breakdown on Miami football. The Super Chat's available, folks. So just want to let you know that we keep going here based on your individual contributions, and would love if somebody would step up at some point. And if you've got any contact to a business where you could either provide us that connection with a business, or you own your own business and could benefit from sponsorship here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, anywhere on the channel, but specifically to this show, Miami Hurricanes Live, then certainly look me up and hit me up at MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. What have you been talking about recently on the channel?
You know, Mark, actually didn't get a chance to do a lot this week. Had a lot of stuff going on, you know, with post-graduation, just kind of figuring out my career path moving forward here. So got a lot of that type of stuff going on. So haven't really had a chance to hop on and speak with the folks. I will be returning on Monday, of course. And I definitely have my farewell, you know, video live that'll probably get emotional for me. I've grown basically on YouTube in front of all of you. So going from 21 to 24, I'm gone through a lot of ups and downs and growth. So that's amazing. But man, this program, I like some of the stuff that I'm seeing. And I know a lot of the stuff, you know, a lot of people want to see it happen way too fast, Mark. But a lot of us also notice some things that aren't being laid down properly. We want to make sure that if you're going to lay the cement to create the foundation of the castle that you want the University of Miami to be, make sure it's the right foundation. Let's not just put it in the oatmeal mix and just throw it out there. No, make it in the oven. Make sure your ingredients are right. But let that oven cook while you're still putting those ingredients together. Let it heat up. Let it warm up. and then put it in the oven. It may take a little longer. It may not be an instant, quick, and we're in the playoffs next year. That's not happening. And for all we know, we may not even win 8 games next year. We're going back to a regular schedule, okay? So who knows? What I do know is there's a couple of things that we have to put together. I think I've seen a little bit of the investments in strength and conditioning. I've seen the investments in nutrition. So there's some things that this program and the administration is working on. Just hope that whoever is advising them understands the importance of assistant coaches, understands the importance of surrounding this head coach, a young up-and-coming head coach who's learning on the job how things are supposed to be ran. And I hope that we can do it, because it'll always be hometown to me. It'll always be a place that I love. And if I ever were to coach there one day, probably will cry in my presser. Just so happy to be there and do all that I can to help. But I do know that there are some things above this staff that is not their fault. That just hasn't been addressed yet. It hasn't been fixed at the University of Miami. And as much as some of our fans would love to say that, just line up. We got talent. We got the same talent as comes in Ohio State and Bama. No, we don't. We don't. And if you take some time, Canes fans or Canes haters alike, to watch other teams, you will be able to gain a little bit of knowledge of what it's like across the board. What other conferences, even Power 5 schools, take some chance to watch some Cincinnati this year. Watch some Indiana. Watch some Ark State. Watch some Coastal Carolina. Watch how the game is being played across the country. And you may learn something. You may learn something.
So I want to hang on to the statement that you just made, but we're going to get this super chat in here. Norman, thank you so much for the contribution. I think the staff should do what's best for King. He has done a lot for this program, and I think it's a great point that you make, Norman, because there is going to be, and it depends on the program, the team, and who's involved, but in these type situations, there are those people who are going to, based on their self-interest, want to push a young man possibly a little too quickly versus what the medical staff wants, what he personally wants. And there's a lot of voices there. And that's where you have to have true leadership and direction and a structure in place. And this is something you talk about all the time, Wholesome One, in these programs. There being a separation between a program that's been established and has tremendous leadership and fortitude and know who they are and their identity. And when these situations come up, everybody knows what role they play. So there's not an argument over who makes the decision, the final call, and who's brought into those conversations. And it's not a big fight and power struggle and politics, and you don't have messes. And that rarely gets brought up in it. But it comes to the forefront in a situation like this. And I'm not saying it's not going to be handled correctly at Miami. I'm just saying at a strong football program, these are the type situations that they have a clamp on because they know what they're doing. But you bring up a great point, Wholesome One, in terms of looking across the country at different football situations, at how football's played at different schools and what we can learn from that. So I'll ask you this, and I'll just go back to a statement you made earlier in connecting the dots of what levels of football we have. And it is shocking and surprising to a lot of people. And some people, because I have the conversations every day, don't believe that there's a real difference between the top 3 or 4 and then the next level and the next level and the next level. But all you have to do is go, and this is just one thread. Now, I don't believe in the transitive property, but if you do the transitive property like 1 million times, yes, that's a trend. And you could do this with a 1,000 different situations over the last number of years where you say, okay, look at the Miami North Carolina game. Look at the result. Look at the way the game was played on the field. Then take North Carolina and see what they did against Notre Dame. Well, they got beaten down pretty well by Notre Dame. Then Notre Dame goes and plays Alabama. And look, and again, that's just one series. We could go through a zillion of those to show you the layers and the levels and the tiers within college football. So that being said, what did you take from the semifinal games where Alabama pretty much did to Notre Dame what I think most people that just watched the game saw, we just saw a speed and dynamic player difference. Really, the line of scrimmage was a struggle. Notre Dame was pretty capable there.
Mhm.
And then the Ohio State Clemson game certainly turned into a different game than most people anticipated. And then what you foresee possibly watching, and what you as a trained eye will be watching when Alabama and Ohio State hit the field.
What great football to watch. It's beautiful. It's great to see these coaches. They all have game plans, Mark. We sit down and we have these big folders and whiteboards on the sideline and all type of stuff. And then you have people that make in-game adjustments, mid-drive adjustments, come out in certain formations just to see if you're going to give me the same look you gave me on film, or are you going to switch it up and you got something new for me? All this, it's just, as someone who studies the intricacies of it, it's amazing to watch it roll. And some people just go, oh, yeah, this 300-pound D-tackle against this 300-pound guard, and then they just ran into each other and their back just broke right off his behind and hit his head on the goalpost. There's a way that was schemed just to move. He could have said, for example, the way that a linebacker addresses a slot, because they want to maintain too high. But if I put my best player in the slot, they're not going to put a linebacker on that slot. So they're going to bring a safety down. So now that allows it to be more players on one side of the field than it does on the other. So that one stretch play that could have just been a simple dive, now we have to block 4 instead of 5. So just from that one motion to the other side of the field, it makes them roll their safeties. And now I have to, if we get a hat on a hat, I got Najee Harris one-on-one with a free safety. But to some people, that's just a simple stretch play, and Najee Harris is really good, and he hurdled this guy, and he ran over there. They didn't notice that Smith was moved from the wide side of the field over to the slot to break the too high, to bring it down, because they're obviously not going to put a linebacker on the Heisman Trophy winner in open space, man. So it's just, I watched some really, really good football. I watched and gained a lot of respect for Notre Dame and their program, how they went toe-to-toe with Alabama as long as they could. It was kind of a stalemate on the O-line, D-line, D-line, O-line.
That's how I saw it too, yeah.
They didn't give up. They didn't quit. They kept making adjustments. They kept fighting. They kept swinging as hard as they could, just like Florida. When they played Alabama, and they had their full team ready to go. They kept swinging. They kept fighting. They made adjustments. They didn't quit. Those are things that you can't say about Miami when we're in big games. You can't. We don't make adjustments. I think they keep fighting. I won't say that these players quit, but we don't make the adjustments necessary to stay in a lot of these big-time games once people get what we do on film defensively. Once they get it on, we don't have a plan B or a plan C or a plan 1B to B. There's just so many different plans these coaches have. If you give me this front, if you give me that defense, if you give me this type of blitz at this time of the game, it's so detail oriented to the nth degree. And you know that that's not being done in Miami.
What I get excited about watching as a football fan is totally different than a lot of people I run into. I do like to see defensive games. I usually don't like to watch a 52-48 game, because that means a lot of blown coverages, a lot of missed tackles. Now, if the offense is so good, like you'll see this in the NFL, where a Breeze, a Rodgers, a Brady, so good, and the precision so good that the defense is actually playing well, but they are so good. That I don't mind watching. I'll watch 35 points against a defense that's a great defense, but the offense is so crazy good that they're just throwing the ball in windows that big. That I can put up. That's fun to watch. Right. But most of it, when you see a 52-48 game, it's because the defense is just so awful, so bad. I hate watching blown coverages, missed tackles, missed assignments. What was intriguing in watching Notre Dame, Alabama for the snoozer that it was for most people, it wasn't for me, because I did like watching just superior effort and technique along the offensive and defensive lines for both teams was tremendous.
Good God. And I think that's going to help them against Ohio State more than people think. Here's why. You played Florida, a team that attacked your secondary in a way that they couldn't run the ball, but they were able to attack your young players in the secondary, right? Then you turn around and play a team in Notre Dame where the football IQ of the players, the football IQ of the coaches, the scheme, and the way, the intelligent way of coming at you. And sometimes just running right at you with a dive and coming at you. So you've tested your defense two ways. The secondary with air raid, spread type, and then kind of a multiple balance in Notre Dame that also got a couple big plays down the field every now and again. But the majority were coming right at you with as you and Bobby Durkins would say, a tight end offense. Your best player can't be on the tight end. I was in the chat, and I don't know if you got a chance to see me down there. I was kept commenting, but yeah, I was in there waving, telling you I was in there. But
I missed you,
Mark. I think you had 400 or 500 people in there, so I didn't feel bad because I was like, you didn't get a chance to see me in the chat, man. But what a great way. I mean, if you're asking me who's going to be the national champion, you should be able to tell based on what I just said who I think is going to win.
Sure. Notre Dame had a touchdown drive in that game when it was still meaningful. Their last touchdown didn't matter, but when it was meaningful, it was like second quarter. And it was impressive on one hand, but it also outlined and underlined the reason why they weren't going to win that game. Because on one hand, it was methodical to a T. Like they were picking up first downs by that much every time. Like 3rd and 3, they'd run it, they'd just get 3.5. They were just, it was like a 19-play drive. Took them 9 minutes. You can't have penalties. You can't have sacks. You can't drop a pass. You can't do anything that's going to set you behind the sticks. You can't have a 2nd and 14. Bama can have a 2nd and 14. Devontae Smith goes the next play for 23. Okay, we just wiped it out. You don't want that, but Bama can wipe that out. Notre Dame can't. So I thought this was exactly the type drive that they dream of, that they want in this game, because they're keeping those guys on the sideline, Najee Harris and company. They're keeping that offense on the sideline. So this is the kind of drive they need. This helps them, but this is also the reason why they're not going to win this game, because this is what they have to do to score, and to repeat that is almost impossible 4 or 5 times a game that you would have to do to keep the Bama offense. Like they would end up winning a game. They'd have to be perfect and win the game like 31-28 because Bama only scored 28 because they only got the ball 5 times because the drives were 9 minutes for Notre Dame. And I just thought, this is the reason why they were successful, and this is what they're trying to do. But this is also the reason why ultimately it's not going to be successful.
It was put very simple in a tweet. Notre Dame scores in 8 minutes. Alabama scores in 8 seconds. It was just that they showed the drive where they went on the drive. There was a highlight. So you had the drive, and the very next clip was Smith taking it to the house on like a quick slant. 80, 90 yards. So, but the Clemson, Ohio State, we're talking about Bama, Notre Dame. So Clemson, Ohio State. Now that was your modern day version of the game, where everybody, defensive coordinators don't matter. And, offense is just that big time. And if the O-line gives an elite QB time, he's going to find somebody open, and there's just nothing you can do about it. Clemson played really dirty, in my opinion, with some of the cheap shots that they took at Fields, and I didn't like that at all. Especially that middle linebacker. He's a dirty player. That needs to be known. He's a disgrace to the game in the way that he plays. Anyway, he gets booted out of the game with some of the stuff that he does and his antics. So we get him out of the game, and Stephen Fields. So you said for Miami, but Fields plays through a lot of, as you can see, he was hurt. I wouldn't say he was injured to where he would have to miss time, but he was definitely hurt. And the heart and determination that he played with was very admirable. And the way that this team kind of rallied around him, I really liked it. I mean, I'm no OHIO fan, but at the same time, man, you can appreciate, you get to a point in your study of the game where you can just appreciate good quality football. And you got a chance to watch that. I think it's going to be a way closer game than people think, though, because that Alabama secondary, if you can get a couple of their freshmen in one-on-one issues against, these 6 5-star wide receivers Ohio State has, and Alabama's pass rush has been a little team-oriented as opposed to one key guy gets to the QB, which you probably would prefer, because then if only one guy can get there, you can just double-team that guy and force someone else to make a play. So I think it's going to be one heck of a game. But if you ask me what I learned from that game, is that if we ever want to get to that level, the recruiting has to go through the roof. You got to stack them. You got to stack them and stack them and stack them and stack them and stack them across the board. You bring in 1 5-star recruit 1 year, you need to bring in 2 4-stars if you can't get another 5-star at that exact same position. Because that's how these top-tier programs are doing it, especially at the wide receiver and offensive line. When you look at Ohio State, you look at Alabama, the 2 teams, I don't think there's a 4-star starting in the game. There's a reason for that. The best of the best come together and make the best of the best teams. It's just that simple. That's why it's called the lifeblood of college football, is recruiting at the highest level.
Yeah, the separation is remarkable. And I in no way think that if Ohio State and Clemson played 10 times, that Ohio State would beat them like that every time. I think that was an aberration. I do think that they're better. I think that they would win most of the games, and maybe they would have another game or two where they would blow them out, and maybe even worse than that. But they're not going to beat them by an average of 21 points a game. It's just not going to happen. Clemson would beat them if they played 10 times, a few times, or 3, or whatever it would be. But it does show you just, even at that even at the tip top, there was separation this year. And sometimes the separation's between Ohio State and Clemson the other way. Or, like it was in 2016 when Clemson blew their doors off with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. It's just astounding that these teams can field NFL teams and they can still lose by 3 touchdowns to somebody else. Wow. Yeah. All right, Wholesome One. Speaking of which, have to move on to a record with an Ohio State beat writer to give another angle on the Buckeyes and the Tide.
Okay.
Appreciate you as always, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. We went a little overtime. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Mark.
Everybody, again, head on over to Wholesome One Holloway. You got to get the deep dive on Miami football and everything that he's got available, and will until the as long as the channel's there, we will support it. And please get on over there. And again, we hope you appreciate what he brings here each and every week. This show and the overall channel is going to thrive based on your individual contributions and based on us getting sponsorships here to MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Wholesome One, you have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Thank you very much. Go Canes.